you can call me JJ. And I'm a full-time professor at Cal State Fullerton, and I teach entrepreneurship. In a prior life, I was in Silicon Valley, as well as in Wall Street, helping companies go public. So today, besides being a professor teaching this type of pitch, I also am an advisor to startups, independently of what I do at the university. And so I have gone to presentations with the startup founders where they make their pitch. And I go there as a board member or an advisor. Additionally, I'm an investor with Titan Angels, which is a investment fund separate from the university. So let me submit to you that my opinion on how to make a presentation to an investment panel is like a consensus view of all these things that I've done. So I'd like to share my screen now, Philip.
Sure.
And I welcome my students who are also joining on the call today. So you actually have two goals when you're making a presentation to an investment panel. And this may sound very simple, but one is to just be remembered. So know that professional investors, whether they're angel investors, venture capitalists, private equity, even seed investors, they actually see a lot of these pitches. And many of them are remarkably similar. And so it's easy to get things confused. So somehow you want to distinguish yourself and just be remembered. Secondly, the objective when you make a pitch like this, you want to continue the conversation, and that'll be achieved in getting a next meeting. Kind of simple, but that's what it's all about. Now, your audience could be really diverse. It could be a seed investor who invests very early stage. Angel investors, well, they invest when you're right at revenue, getting some traction. Private equity investors, they like to come in and invest in troubled enterprises, by the way. VCs, traditionally, they're writing, $10 million checks, although the VC community has done a reversed a U-turn and is getting more involved in early stage investments. And then it could be bankers or lenders. The only reason I put this list up is those individual investors and lenders have different objectives and different expectations. I'd like to just start with soft skills. And this may sound very simple, but the presentation format is as a human being, you are presenting to other human beings. And it's not just facts, it's not just information. There is a charismatic exchange that needs to be recognized. So if it's a face-to-face environment, when you enter the room, you might find a group of 5, 10, could be 50 people in the room for you to make a presentation to. Sometimes there's an ability to warm up a bit, and that is have a little chit chat. That's normal. That maybe comforts you as the speaker. And if you can, you want to shake everybody's hand, hand out your business card, and certainly thank them for the opportunity. Other times you walk in that room, you're on, and you're immediately presenting. So it does kind of vary from group to group. I wanted to remind you that in your presentation, certainly in a face-to-face environment, the best thing to do is to plant your feet and keep your hands at your side and avoid unnecessary movement, which is distracting. And then know that most of communication maybe in excess of 70% is nonverbal. And so that is done a lot with your eyes and making eye contact. Super important. In terms of your voice, your vocal variety, speak loud enough that people hear you. Oftentimes when we're speaking, we're nervous, and one outcome is you speak too fast. So beware of the pace that you're maintaining. By the way, I always advise using real words. And what that means is avoid the lawyer talk. Use phrases that you would use at Starbucks when you're talking with a friend. Avoid using vernacular that you would never use any other time. Just be you. A couple other things. I like a joke just as much as anybody. We are living in an unusual time and a very woke society, and it is easy to offend people. So I would just beware of being a little too humorous, because it might backfire on you. Now, after you're actually presenting, the panel could choose to interrupt you. I would say normally they let you talk. Sometimes there are individuals who can't control themselves. And well, it's kind of their nickel. So if they're going to interrupt you, you need to allow it. They might even choose to disagree with you on the spot. So what do you do with that? Well, first of all, I would suggest you calm yourself down and ask them to clarify. So thank you for making that comment. Can you tell me more? And let them come back. And usually that'll suffice. That'll right there. Also, when you're presenting due to nerves, sometimes you forget to say things, some of them important. So what I would do was when you go to the Q&A period, you simply say, oh, one thing I forgot to mention. And then you say it and you're all good. And my advice is don't use a laser pointer. 99% of us never use them. And when we do, it's kind of like Star Wars. I want to talk about the types of presentations that are possible. So a text-based presentation is difficult to read. And what happens when you present a very text-heavy PowerPoint to an audience, in a way, you'll lose them because they're going to attempt to read this. And it's almost impossible to read because of font size and its complexity. So this is exactly the presentation you do not want to do. Now, we'll remember fondly our old friend, Steve Jobs. He was an incredible speaker, and he had a practice of putting up an image and talking about the image. He didn't have any text up. And at the end of the presentation, one would say, well, what did Steve say? Well, he said, buy an iPhone. Okay, I get that. But that's about all you remember. So unless you're Steve Jobs, I would stay away from this format. And instead, I would have what I call a leave behind. And that is where you'll have a powerful image and then 3, 4, maybe 5 bullets with a little bit of text. And what this enables your audience to do is after you're gone, to go back and review the PowerPoint. And that can be the difference between getting that next meeting or not. With all that said, your investor wants to know that if they give you $100,000, are they going to get $1 million back in 5 to 7 years? Honestly, they don't need a lot of detail. And as a startup founder, it is so normal to want to share everything you know, but it's really not necessary. So in fact, I suggest you be more like a drinking fountain. And that is where you provide them enough information to get them excited, to get to that next meeting. And you're going through like a progress of progressive disclosure, right? You're giving them more and more information to get them to move forward. Now, a panel presentation traditionally is 15 minutes of actual presentation and 15 minutes of questions. Increasingly, the angel groups, the VC groups are requesting that that presentation be shortened, 12 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes. And so you actually have to have different versions of this presentation. There are some environments where you present and it's now 15 minutes and 10 seconds, they cut you off. So always be prepared to end with the proper time. So this is my view of the world. So I would say to do a 15-minute presentation, you should have no more than 12 slides. And I'm going to walk you through that now and explain what's on every slide. So as it sounds, the first, just adjusting something on my end here, or trying to. Anyway, the first presentation, whoops, I skipped, is the introductory slide. And it's just company name, the presenter, and then I like a 1-sentence, 5 to 7 words maybe, description of the business. That is 30 seconds, and then you move on. Next one, you go to the problem and the customer. And usually this focuses on the pain. So what's happening with your customer today that you can help them solve pain? So pain's really an opportunity, of course. And if you can give some context how the customer is dealing without you today, that's helpful. So maybe a minute on this slide. Then you go to the solution. And fundamentally, and that is, how are you going to help the customer solve their problem? How are you going to get rid of their pain, make them happy, give them pleasure, whatever that is. And if possible, maybe you could tell a story, which is in effect a use case, how someone used your product and was better off. A minute 30 for that one, maybe. Then we go to the market. And so the investor wants to know that your business concept, as it becomes a company, is going to be thriving. So this is a story about the marketplace that you're going to play in and how this market not only needs your solution, but the market itself is growing, it's exciting, it's dynamic, because that's where the investment dollar is going to go. Now, if the market is dull, if it's mature, they're probably not going to invest, regardless how sharp your product might sound. You could also describe the profile of the optimal customer in this slide, about a minute 30. Another slide that I've recently added is why now? And so think about it. The world is getting along without you. What has come together today that makes the need for your product, the need for your solution so important? So what's happening? So if you think about it, Facebook was launched in the early 2000s. What came together that made it such a good fit, such a good time for Facebook? Was it technology, post 9/11, smartphones, culture? So you're trying to tell a story that now is good, not just good, it's terrific. Now we're going to talk about the competitors and the competitive advantage you have. Usually this is presented, in this case, is a grid. And here we're comparing Google to Bing to Yahoo. And you're saying, well, this is how we're the same, but this is how we're different or better. And acknowledge that competition is a good thing. because that means that the market's big enough to make money in. If there's no competition, if nobody's doing what you're doing, as an investor, I would be suspicious that there could be any money to be made. Finally, we're moving on to business model and marketing. It's how are you going to make money? So revenue model would be a one-time transaction, a subscription, something like that. How are you priced? Do you have any third-party validation that says that this works? And then go to market. So go to market would be on the shelves at 7-Eleven, in Amazon, or you're going to do social selling on Instagram. Now, this slide is multi-headed and difficult to present because there's so much to it, but you at least have to address it in modest detail. Next slide is called current status and traction. So a typical response from an investor when you present was, hey, I like you, I like the concept, but I'd like to see more traction. So come back and see us in 6 to 12 months. Now that may sound like the brush off, and to a degree it is, but many investors in the angel, VC, and other investment groups prefer to invest once you have considerable traction. Generally, they don't want to invest in your research and development. So how do you demonstrate your current status and traction? Well, one is a proof of concept. And in the world of investors, they say, well, will the dog eat the dog food? So you come up with a new recipe for puppy chow. Well, show us a dog eating it, right? And that could be any number of market tests you've done, etc. This is a time to talk about your intellectual property. If you have a patent, be truthful about where you are in your development. Are you in research and development? Are you building the product? Are you in market? Very important considerations. And what a great time to brag about your customer engagement, letters of intent, or even orders if you have them. Those are all elements of traction. Next comes the financial projections. And in my classroom, I require 3 years. In the private sector, you might be requested for 5. The problem I have with 5 years is that as you go out over time, the possibility for error goes up. And most investors recognize that. And so you want to present a year-over-year look that is believable. So let me show you what that could look like. Generally, what you do is present a very high-level graphical image of your P&L for 2022, 23, and 24. And then you can have some text alongside that says, these were some assumptions that went into this forecast. So one would be no salaries or rent the first year, very common. And by the way, we see the revenue kicking in second quarter. So it just gives a little context. Now, if your audience has people that are financial analysts, CFOs, controllers, or bankers, they will be very unhappy with this slide because they want more data. They want spreadsheets. But maybe you could provide that to them at the next meeting, right? So the goal is to get to that next meeting. Then next up is your management team. And this one, in the top 2 or 3 reasons to invest in a startup, it's the people. And I love the format of having the photo, the name and title, but it isn't what the person is doing, it's why they are the best choice for that position. Super powerful. And then I would do this So you have your leadership team, the management team, and I would also have your board of advisors listed as well in a similar format. The advisors can be the difference sometimes in getting the money or not. Then we go to the funding and ROI. And so one of the questions you'll get asked, you might as well talk about it, is how much money has been invested to date? Usually that's the founder's team, maybe friends and family. And so you just disclose that, okay, we have $100,000 invested in the company right now. Next thing to talk about was how much money are you looking for? And how are you going to use the money? And then if someone gives you $100,000, what equity percentage are they going to get? And that's where you're selling part of the company to the investor. And then the general terms and type of note. Is it straight equity, a safe note, etc.? And by disclosing all of that, you have created a de facto pre-money valuation, which is what the company's worth prior to the $100,000. You conclude this slide with a happy forecast, which is your exit strategy, is that you anticipate that in 5 to 7 years, you'll be acquired by a company such as Google, Amazon, or whatever, and that in fact, recent acquisitions have demonstrated a return on investment of, of 10 times, something like that. So that's a lot to say in this slide. This slide is hugely important to the investor and the investor panel, because this is why they're doing it, right? And now we go to the summary slide. So if any time remains, you look at your audience and say, well, I'd like you to remember us for 3 reasons, blah, blah, blah. And then you conclude. From there, we go to Q&A, right? So I got a trick for you, is that once you've started making this presentation to multiple investors, you're going to become skilled at answering their questions. And the investors will remarkably ask similar questions. So here's what you do. In what is now like the appendix of your presentation, you have the answer to what you anticipate are going to be more in-depth questions. You'll have a slide dedicated to each of these. So let's say that you're in the Q&A, they say, well, I don't really understand the problem. Tell me more. Click, click, click. You go to that slide and you represent it possibly in more detail. So this is just a really powerful way to respond to the intelligent questions that your investors might offer. And by doing this and being prepared, oh, it makes you look so good compared to most presenters. So Philip talked with you about the incubator. We'd love you folks to consider it. We're a nonprofit incubator. We don't take equity as compared to the majority of incubators in the market. Titan Angels is a Rule 504 LLC fund, and we invest in early stage startups. If someone's looking for money, I'd be happy to talk with you. And that's my horse, George. This is how you get in touch with me. And if you go to Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, I'm typically listed as John Bradley Jackson, as well as Twitter, by the way. Yeah, I've written a few books. You can check those out. And one more thing, there is an official appendix, and you will discover that the investor crowd kind of has their own language, their own nomenclature, and they love to throw it at you and test your knowledge of it. And so I've got a series of items defined at the back of this presentation, which will help you understand what the heck those investors are talking about. So Philip, that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you so much. This was very, very informative. All right, let's open it up for those of you who have questions.